Hello and welcome to the Sober Experience, formerly known as the Spiritual Experience, where we share stories of overcoming problematic situations in life through triumph and working together, as well as recovery topics and all other forms of spirituality, self-help, and the like. I'm your host, Jay Lewis, and here we go. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back, Sober Experience. Hope you guys are doing well. Please don't forget to like and subscribe on all podcast platforms, as well as check out our YouTube page, The Sober Experience, where you'll see the graphic is like some guy carrying a big cup of coffee, way bigger than him, spilling it all over the place, trying to keep his P's and Q's tight. So we have another guest that came with us this afternoon, and this is somebody that I met, I don't know, maybe 6 months, a year ago? When was this guy's anniversary?
I think 6 months ago.
About 6 months ago, yeah. That I didn't know who he was until he got in the car and I saw his face. I was like, oh, I remember his face. And I guessed a few things right, and then I just babbled his ear off for the last 2 hours, which is good because then now it's going to be his turn. And he's a good friend to our good friend Otis. So everyone say hello to Matt. Matt, say hello.
Hello.
All right, beautiful. Matt, first things first, where are you from?
I'm from Indiana, actually. I grew up in a small town called Plymouth.
Okay. Are you? Do you have siblings, or are you by yourself?
Yeah, I got two siblings. I'm the baby. I was the oops.
What was it?
Yeah.
Did you know you were the oops, or was it?
I don't remember not knowing that I was the oops, so I think that was kind of a known thing, yeah.
What's the age gap between you guys?
Not too much. I mean, my brother's 4 years older and my sister's 6 years older, but they definitely admitted to have, they sold they got rid of all the baby stuff, and they kind of moved on. And I lived, my room was the laundry room for a while. Yeah.
Sounds like a lot of fun, though, being a kid and having the laundry room as your room.
Oh, yeah. I think it definitely affected me. I would often, my mom would run the dryer just to get me to sleep. Yeah. So white noise is very...
Right, and that smell, that laundry smell, the fabric softener or whatever. I don't know. I always like that kind of stuff, how people like gasoline and whatever. So what was it like in Indiana? Was it you in the suburbs or in the city?
So, well, my family's from, Chicago area, and I was actually born in Illinois, and then so we moved. And, yeah, I mean, it was small town vibes. Definitely always felt... different there, you know what I mean? It was a nice town that my grandparents had actually found, because they, growing up, we'd go camping in the area, and my grandma and grandpa would ride around on a moped and just discover towns, and they just kind of found this Indiana town to retire in, and the place that my dad had a dental practice at in Illinois when I was very young was a really small town, so it kind of seemed like an upgrade. But, yeah, I mean, growing up there, it's a very conservative place. It's a very, kind of Christian place, and lots of cornfields. Sports is really important. And
were you an athlete in school and stuff?
No, I mean, we dabbled in it here and there, community stuff, but no, from early on, I think it was established that wasn't really my area of expertise.
What did you like to do as a kid?
Yeah, I mean, video games, and just especially since I was a little bit younger than my siblings, I mean, I was very creative, and yeah, I mean, found a lot of solace in video games, and I loved movies, and yeah, so definitely interested in that.
What about that stuff spoke to you? Was it do you think, looking back, do you think it was escapism, or do you think it was just well, my sister's 6 years older than me, she's not gonna, this is just my space, my time, my world, that kind of thing?
I think it always just kind of made sense. It always just kind of made sense, and it was also getting just that small bit of storytelling, and then over time, the more sophisticated the games are, Zelda Ocarina of Time. I don't know if you played that game, but it's like one of my favorite stories. Like, you know what I mean? And you don't kind of realize that as a kid. You're just kind of like playing because it's fun, and you're playing with swords and all that. But just like, I think, yeah, maybe it is escapism, but just it was always just made sense, like living in those worlds. You know what I mean? And like experiencing characters and storytelling in that medium, right?
Right. What about in school?
So like, yeah, I mean, I'm sure that I could have been diagnosed with ADD or ADHD at some point, because like I just never could focus in school, except for the areas that I excelled in, which was like music and theater, and I was on the speech team in high school. All those areas, well, even then, like I always had a hard time like committing to things.
Even something that you enjoyed.
Yeah.
There was a veil of difficulty there, even though you loved it and you were like, fuck trigonometry, you know?
But like, even the things like, you know, reading your lines and memorizing them, it's like, luckily I did have just kind of like a knack for those things. I was constantly making up for like, not really putting the work, right? So like school in general, like I always had a hard time.
How did you feel when you were doing the arts, that kind of stuff in school?
Just great, man. I mean, I always felt like kind of a awkward kid, and like was picked on and whatnot, and not to like an obscene extent. I think the normal amount of just kind of like bullying and trouble that a kid who at the time was like, again, obsessed more with like playing with swords than like playing basketball, right? Especially in a town like that, you kind of stick out. And I was the weird kid. I was called weird a lot, and I mean, I love being on stage. I was entertained when I was like probably fucking like 8 years old. You know, I'd be entertaining my family, my extended family at Christmases and stuff, like reciting full Weird Al Yankovic songs and stuff like that. I was always and especially like my dad's side of the family, or the Irish Catholic, and thinking back, some of those Christmas parties, there was probably some alcohol, involved, but it was always kind of like what can we get Matthew to do? Like it was like kind of a source of entertainment. So like,
it sounds beautiful though.
Oh yeah, I mean like. From an early age, that's how I connected. Right?
That's what I mean.
That's how I connected. I couldn't, like third, fourth grade, whatever it was, I couldn't figure out like it took this test on like how thermometers work or whatever, or how time works. So like reading an analog clock, and I had no idea what the hell it was, but I knew I was the guy that would be picked to be the big bad wolf in the Red Riding Hood play, right? Oh. Like, it was no question. It's like, well, he's going to do that because, like, he can't shut up. Like, he obviously needs to perform. You know what I mean? And I feel like I've always kind of been that person.
And did your parents, like, they encourage that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, yeah, they were always supportive. And
it's so beautiful because if you think about it, it's not like them silly... Please forgive me because I never watched this show. But in my mind, you're like describing like Varsity Blues. And then instead of that, you're like, no, man, I'm going to be on stage and I'm going to be this creative, expressive person who plays whatever. What instrument did you play?
So I took piano lessons, and then I played trumpet in high school. But then eventually, my true love, I ended up teaching myself how to play the drums. I should have been in percussion probably from the get-go, because that was always like my favorite. Yeah,
so you're like this creative, quote unquote geek, right, in this thing, and then with the wrong parents, it could be like, dude, you need to join the wrestling team,
right?
Or you need to, you know what I'm saying? Because there's kids out there that they have that, and that's like a source of like super rebellion, where it's just like, no, man, I want to be somebody else on stage for an hour a day, 4 days a week, and then everybody's going to come, and then I'm going to give this to people, and it's going to make them happy. It's such a nice thing, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So when did, how old were you when like partying started coming into your life?
I mean, it took a while. I mean, I've been an addict. I mean, I've had this thing my whole life. I mean, like, it just took a while before I used those things. Like, I used to run around church events and whatnot and steal people's pop. That's what we call it. And we call it pop. They'd be like, watch out for Matthew. He'll steal your pop.
You're like a little thief, the pop bandit.
Oh, yeah. And I would, like, sneak into the fridge. And yeah, I mean, like, this is very, like, kind of, like, foreshadowing. Like, sneaking into the fridge and sneaking a drink of Pepsi. You know
right.
What I mean?
Yeah.
Like, this guy was definitely rehearsing. Yeah, so, like, I was super religious. So, like, I didn't do any of that stuff. I didn't lose my virginity till I was, like, maybe 20. It all pretty much broke, like, right around 20. And
so after high school, you went straight to college, or what'd you do?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't want to, like, I had no direction. Like, again, like, when you're in Indiana, it's like, it's not like being an actor is like a career choice. It's not like anyone views it out there. Like, I think if I would have grown up here, would have seen a little more attainable, like, oh, well,
like
yeah,
a path.
send that guy to theater school. Like, we don't necessarily have that, or we don't. It's not really considered. I guess I didn't know it was an option, really. You know what I mean? So, like, I'm going to school just because I'm going to college, and because I think that's kind of just what I'm supposed to do.
Are you studying anything specific, or just like whatever, liberal arts?
Yeah,
discipline.
Liberal arts, and it would go good. And again, just like with that focus thing, right? Especially with no supervision. Like, are you kidding me? Like, I have no self-control. What are you talking about? I would just be sitting in philosophy class or whatever, just playing Warcraft 3 for an hour. You're like, you telling me, like, all I have to do is show up and I get participation credit and I just play Warcraft all the time? And yeah, so it was a rough first year, like, not drinking and, like, kind of being that out, feeling like an outsider. And I think so starting to party, like, felt good because, like, I felt like it was my entrance into the real world, you know what I mean? Like, because other people had partied in high school and everyone was partying in college, and I always felt like I was, like, missing out, right? So, like, when I went into it, like, you know, I went into it, like, pretty hard, pretty quick, you know? So it was just kind of like, but it wasn't like college partying. It was just a friend group that was not even in college yet. They were still in high school. I just was kind of I was going home a lot still, and just kind of ended up, like, in those circles, and just, like, lots of house parties and, like, drinking in garages. Like, we, you know what I mean? It's not like we were getting fake IDs and going to bars or clubs or anything like that. It's not like there was anywhere to go. So, but then when I turned 21, then I was the guy, right? Like, you know what I mean? I've always tried to find a version of being the guy, right? So that's why, like, yeah, being 21-year-old, being the one bringing the booze, like, instantly kind of, like, evolved into, okay, being the guy that sells weed.
You have arrived.
Here he is. And being the guy that, like, steals beer for everyone. You know what I mean? Like, that was kind of my way in, because that was a good feeling.
Yeah. Know? So how did you feel when you got that, I guess, for lack of a better term that we were talking about before, that validation? Like, oh, I matter to all these kids.
Oh, it was everything.
Yeah.
It was everything. Yeah. Especially when, you know, any kind of, like, I joined the speech team when I got to college, and that could have gone well. Like, you know what I mean? Like, anything that could have, like, gone in a direction that was, like, the healthy Matt acting out in that way, like, those were all falling to the wayside, right? So I still had to, like, you know, I dropped out of college. So all those kind of things, like, the theater class that I was taking or the drum instructor I had, it's like, sure, it's not New York, but it still could have provided some level of, like, outlet for me or whatever. So,
yeah, like a constructive thing. They start slipping away.
Those are all pretty much gone pretty quickly, and I'm just, like, living in Indianapolis for not really any reason, since I'm not going to college there anymore. And yeah, I mean, before I knew it, I was back home like working at a pizza place like I had in high school, and like everything had just kind of like, and then I'm just a guy, you know, living with his parents again, and yeah.
What are they saying to you when this is going on, or what do you think is going through their mind?
So it was a hard time because like my parents were still together, but they were still married, but like they hadn't been together for quite a while. So like it was a very kind of precarious, like, especially like Midwest, my kind of like Midwestern upbringing. It's very like don't ask, don't tell, like everything's fine. So there wasn't really a conversation until like things went wrong, right? When I started getting arrested, or you know what I mean? Like when it starts really causing a problem, it's
right.
like, you know what I mean? Otherwise there's kind of this notion of just like everything's fine, you know?
What about your siblings?
I mean, they were off, you know, in college and then careers and just, my sister, you know, they were doing other things, and there was a healthy distance enough to where they didn't really get to see where I think my parents' relationship was at, and you know, again, before like the really getting in trouble, but again, like it's not like anyone was really in anyone's business too much,
right?
There would be like, I guess there would be like, hey, you know, let me talk to you, or kind of talks every once in a while, but nothing that would stick, right? Because when you're in it, like when I had already started to kind of like tap into, because like in high school and all that, again, I was such a good kid. You could trust me. You could go away from the weekend and leave me alone, and I would be, I mean, we teepeed and stuff like that, but like otherwise we thought that was like, ooh, like creating works bombs or whatever. And but yeah, I went from being this like really trustworthy guy, like when you get all that credit, then you can use that for a while. You know what I mean? You can start to manipulate pretty, you know, it's heartbreaking.
It's currency.
Yeah, 100%. And it's, so I got away with that for a minute, and then obviously
the wheels start coming off.
Right.
Yeah. So you're back home. Some of these dreams are like put on hold. Other things are going on. You're back to, you're basically almost like in 13th grade.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And yeah. So what happens next?
So yeah, that's when I start, you know, getting in trouble, and you know, it's a small town, so it's very public, you know, and you get your old Christian friends kind of like reacting and trying to like get in touch with me, like, oh, he's really like falling from the top or whatever. And it just kind of like those years like back in my hometown, and just like becoming obsessed with this relationship that was just like toxic. And obviously, like, you know, when you pick one that's specifically tailored to just like, when you I was really in my masochistic kind of like tendencies, when you pick the one that's just gonna hurt you, you know what I mean? The one that, oh, this one hurts me, I'm gonna stay right here, you know what I mean? And it just, years went by, and like I started playing in a band, and it's like wild thinking back, because like in a way, even though we partied a lot, like those guys are my brothers. Like we were, I think we were all kind of in this weird impasse of time. Like none of us really wanted to be there doing that, but we were. And like, yeah, it's interesting looking back at it, and just like we eventually got what we wanted, which was all staying in a house together, because I'd pined for that for a while, to just like, you know, once my parents had finally split up, like just renting our house before my parents got a chance to get rid of it, just like take advantage of the situation. We can just be there, we can write music and obviously party, and but I got what I wanted or whatever, and you're just kind of looking around at the house that you grew up in, and it's just like you and your bandmates now, and it's like life is definitely not what you thought it would be, and it was just like, yeah.
It sounds like, to me, and I'm speculating, it's like, okay, oh, I have this dream, and this dream is happening, but it's happening in my parents' house.
Right.
Like, we're not renting a house in Texas or in California trying to go and do some fucking wild shit and be on the road and like really make that dream. But it's like, oh, well, I'm with my bandmates and we're making music, we're doing a thing, but we're stuck in the mud over here.
Well, and here's the other thing. This is when I really started to just like, I don't know how I didn't run out of luck because of all the drinking and driving I was doing. I mean, a new girl I was seeing at the time lived, at least an hour away. Ooh. And I was doing that drive drunk all the time, and just like, yeah, it's amazing, just
without even thinking, like, it's just, this is a Thursday, this is my life.
And I had become the what's he gonna do tonight partier. I was the like entertainment. I was like, what's he gonna do tonight? Like, I'd pass out on a car and they'd take the car out and like drive it around the block or whatever. Like, I was like constantly like embarrassing myself, and like, but it just kind of like felt like my place or whatever, right?
How old were you at the time?
I mean, shit, I guess like early to mid 20s. Yeah.
So what happened next?
So, my aunt had lived here for a long time, and she had always told my father that I belonged here, that I belonged to a theater school or whatever. And
in New York, for those of you who are listening elsewhere.
Right. And I mean, she was a dancer, she was a performer, she was like, she had lived here, and she's like had this incredible life and career. And just,
this is your dad's sister?
This is my dad's sister, yeah.
Cool.
And the getting in trouble and stuff was like just behind me enough, and I was starting to actually do a little bit better. That girl that I was seeing was a good influence, and like, though I was still having issues with the drinking and driving, it's like things were actually kind of like getting a little bit better. You could tell in the band, the guys were saying that the drumming was getting better. You know what I mean? Like, things were kind of letting up just a little bit. And essentially, like, I just kind of saw an email like between my dad and my aunt, where I had expressed like an interest in visiting or something like that, but he obviously wanted to change for the better for me, and like had phrased it in a way to her that it was like, Matthew's coming. Like, what would it look like if Matthew was coming tomorrow? And I saw this email back where she's saying that, oh, he could audition for this show. He could take this improv class. He could do, and think of it too, from someone growing up in the middle of the country, like in the Midwest or whatever, like, and this is all in New York City. Right. Like, just reading that email and like seeing it, I was just like, I'm going to do that. Like, I'm going to fucking do that. And it was kind of shitty at the time. The poor guys, like, it was my parents' house. And once I decided I was leaving, it was like everyone kind of had to go. And it was like, I mean, now I'm really good friends with those guys still, but it's just like, at the time, it was kind of, like I said, we were all kind of at this impasse of our lives, and like that was kind of the catalyst to like, well, I guess this chapter's over. And then I moved to New York. Yeah.
Some would call that a geographic.
Yes. You know what? When I would hear that term, I would be like, oh, I wonder why I didn't do a geographic. And then I think about it. Then I think about it, and I'm like, yes, I did.
No, but I think it was just also, I mean, the timing and everything, the universe gives you that thing.
Right.
My interpretation of like a geographic is like, the first out you can take, you take it. The first exit,
yep.
Like, you take it. So you arrive in New York. What's going on when you get here?
Man, I hit this city, and like two things kind of happened at once. Like, it was like obviously out the gate that this was the place I was supposed to be for what I want to do, like out the gate. And it was also clear that I could be an alcoholic the way that I wanted to. You know what I mean?
So both things were true. This is for you, and for your disease,
yeah.
This was home.
So, like, I mean, I was staying in Midtown at her place, and there's a bar in the basement, right? Like, essentially, like, and the 4 a.m. and just like, not not driving. That was big, so I could still drink and not have the threat of like crashing. And so I kind of hit the ground running right away. But I also got a job at a restaurant right away, and like my first audition ever was for this theme park show, and I mean, I was drumming constantly at the time, like, so my chops were pretty good. So I went in there, and it was just supposed to be for kind of like a British invasion thing, and I just went in there, just crushed it. I just like they said go crazy, and I was like, all right. So I went fucking crazy, and so I'm in New York for like just shy of a month. I started some classes. I started like some improv stuff.
Everything's fitting like a glove.
I'm like, this is amazing. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, you booked this job. You need to go to another state for 8 months.
No way.
I was just looking at the contract with my aunt. I was like, is this real? Like, should I do this? And I remember her being like, because I just gotten there, right? And she's like, damn it, like, I hate that you're leaving New York right away, but you have to do this. And so I go do this gig, and I'm immediately surrounded by all these people who are dancers and singers and musicians that live in New York. They're all in their 20s, and we're all in the same like nice they put us in these nice apartment complexes together, and I'm getting paid to make music, to play music. My mind was blown. And so of course it was just like this incredible summer and then some of partying. We're just like,
yeah, it's like remember what we were saying before, like the dream, but instead of being in your mom's friggin' house, now it's like in real life.
Yeah.
Oh,
I mean,
man.
we're some days we're playing like five shows a day, and it was like kind of like a ride, right? So the show was like 25 to 30 minutes, so it's like a marathon, and we were just like, we'd go in that first show, I'd be hungover as hell, but then, you know, after the first show or two, you sweat it all out, and you're like, by the time the day's over, you get back, and we just go for it again, you know what I mean? So it kind of had created this like this perfect little recipe for me at the time, you know?
Sounds like you were happy.
Yeah, I mean, like, obviously it's not sustainable, but like at the time, like, I was living like you said, I was living the dream, you know?
Yeah. So what happens next? You come home from that tour?
Oh, man, I came back, and I'm back bussing tables, making shit money, living deep in Brooklyn. It's taken me...
Oh, so you moved out of your aunt's place?
Yeah, so that was a big landmark. A friend of mine was coming to New York around the same time. This guy I went to high school with, like,
wow,
known him forever, and I'm just like...
Also creative guy?
Yes and no. Like, he was... but very academic. Right. You know what I mean? He had a plan. And so, yeah, we got a place in deep Brooklyn, and it would take me like 2 hours to get home at those late nights, closing the restaurants because of the trains and whatnot. So like when I came back, I was just fucking miserable. I was so miserable because of that drastic change. You know what I mean? It's like I'm in New York, but like, and then, you know, booking your first audition is a terrible thing to happen, because then when you're exposed to reality, which is like years, we're talking years of rejection. Like, sure, like I shouldn't say that, because I got lucky with a lot of like student films and a way to like get experience and like create a reel, but like objectively, like actually getting paid to work in the creative industry, it's really fucking hard to book a gig, even a gig that you don't want. You know what I mean?
And so you would just not only go for music playing gigs, you'd go for acting gigs and everything else?
Yeah, I mean, like when I came out here, that's to New York. That's really what I wanted. I mean, like growing up, I just with as soon as I saw Jim Carrey on screen and like knew what a movie was, you know, and like started all that acting growing up. I think like sure, I love music too, but definitely what I really wanted to do when I came out here was act, but honestly, it just kind of came with anything's on the table. I would just say yes to anything, right? So, yeah.
Yeah. So what happens next?
So, Yeah, I mean, I became a bartender. That was a big step up. You know, you go from busboy to server. That money's pretty good, and you look behind that bar, and especially as kind of like a performer, you're like, I could be back there. Like, and I mean, I don't know about you, but I always thought bartenders were so cool. Like,
oh my God!
even
yes.
before I knew what a drink was. You know
Cooler
what I mean?
than me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
they knew everything. They knew everyone. They were suave. It's almost like when you have like a really good barber. Like, dude, that guy knows everything. I'm like, holy shit.
Yeah.
You know?
So, yeah. So I was so into it at first. I had this little cocktail book I took with me everywhere. I studied and how it always happens is, you know, that I was bar backing, and the barbacks at this place actually got to make the service drinks. Some barbacks just, like, you know, do all the side shit. So I was making drinks. I already knew the menu and whatnot. And then, of course, one night, the bartender didn't show up. And then you're a bartender, you know? And, yeah, I bartended for years at restaurants and then, like, dive bars, clubs. And, you know, over time, like, you go from being someone that, like, would kind of compartmentalize drinking to, you know, maybe a shot every once in a while to just, like, fast forward. I mean, like, it's just kind of your entire existence, right? Like, from the moment you walk in, like, I'd be drinking beers at 10 a.m., you know, and just keeping it kind of going, you know what I mean? And it's not like you're keeping track, because it's just like, it's not really your stock. You're just kind of like, you know, drinking off the bar. And
Yeah. So you go from bar back to bartender. Drinking is taking you down. Yeah. So when does the end show up?
So it's like, you know, several kind of failed relationships later, and
how are you feeling about yourself when this is going on?
starting to feel pretty terrible. I'm definitely drinking to numb what is, like, excruciating pain.
What your life has become.
Yeah, and it's like not really being conscious of that because of how constantly I was numbed, right? And, like, I mean, there were some pretty good things going for me. I had started producing this show with my ex that, like, I put so much, like, of me into, right? But it kind of, like, in an alcoholic way. Like, I was just obsessed with it. And, like, when it wouldn't go my way, it just, like, consumed me. And, like, being in a leadership kind of role was really hard for me. And I feel like I just, you know, I had a hard time working with my ex and the other producer. And I just, like, felt the pressures of this show so much. And I just was starting to, like, definitely not like the person that I was, but also kind of just, like, embracing this lifestyle that I had started to create. It's like, yeah, always drinking at the bar, or the guy that, like, you know, would break away from rehearsal to, like, go across the street and have a drink and, like, get the bartender to, like, have cool vibes enough with the other bartender that they, like, give you a shot or something like that, right? It just kind of felt like this culture and this kind of, like, we get each other, right? And but I was very functioning, just, like, drinking all the time. And then a big marker was, so my aunt, I mean, she got diagnosed with cancer, and she went through it, like, I want to say 4 times.
Wow.
Did
she know what was going on with you?
No. I mean, I was pretty good at keeping it away from my family. I mean,
we call it, like, I was not to interrupt, but it's still,
no,
like,
you're good.
like I was good at being good for, like, an hour or two.
Yeah. Oh,
you
yeah.
know? Yeah. And then just like, oh, yeah, boom. Like, you have all the right jokes. Everybody, yeah, I'm doing this thing.
Yeah.
And then you slide away and then back under the cloud.
Right.
And she got sick. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, it was, you know, inspiring in that, like, every time, she'd go through chemo and she'd get better, and then she'd immediately go back to what she was good at, which was like being a personal trainer, auditioning. Like, talk about like inspiration. Like, she's the fucking real deal, man. Like,
she's living it.
Yeah. And
wow.
So, after I would always say that it would take something like fucking cancer that many times to like take down someone like Eileen. She's the oldest on my dad's side, and she when I showed up in New York that first day, she's like looking hip, wearing skinny jeans, got the smartphone. She's like trying to lead me through Times Square, and she's just gone. You know what I mean? She's walking like a true New Yorker. I'm just like, what the hell? Like, this woman was incredible. And so I get basically a call from a friend of hers, and I go to L.A. where she was at the time. And I proceeded, and it was interesting because I was on either, I think, antibiotics or steroids for like a really bad sinus infection or something like that. So I wasn't supposed to drink. But obviously I still did here and there, but to my credit, I did significantly
You weren't going to not
reduce.
drink. That was
right.
I
significantly reduced. So I think it definitely played into this being the incredible week that it was, and that like I basically spent I didn't know what week it was when it was happening, but it's very much clear now. It's just like I spent the whole week kind of like with her friends and kind of like celebrating her life in a way. And like I would visit her in the hospital, and she'd send me on an adventure and try to like live vicariously through me. Like, I'd go do yoga on a mountain, or I'd go to this taco place, or like, and basically led to, the day that I'm supposed to leave, because she's going to go into hospice care with a good friend of hers, and that's going to be the next step, right? It's like that morning, like 4 a.m, I start getting a knock on the door where I was staying, and it's like her best friend, like, you have to come with me. And like, we went to the hospital, and, it was time, and we held her hand and just like listened to Motown music. That's what her friend insisted. Like, this is what we should listen to. We sat there for hours, and it's an incredible thing, man. I mean, I'd never been that person before, and she passed, and I immediately felt this just kind of like fear of like this person that I love, now that she's like passed on or whatever, like she's going to see me for who I really am. Like, now she knows I'm a piece of shit, right? That's the thought, my darkest thought. I mean, but there was still a lot of love in that, like, her friend and I went and had breakfast, and just like we're laughing, after something like that, you share it together. We're like talking about something, and we're laughing and feeling this sense of like release. And then, I went back home, and it was just so serendipitous, and like the timing of it. She was clever. She's like, I made it. I saw her. We had this great week. I can still picture the glint in her eye the last time I saw her, almost as if she just kind of knew it was goodbye. And that was actually the time that she recommended. We decided what taco place I was going to.
How were the tacos?
They were awesome.
Oh,
and so I came back home, and everything just got worse from there. Everything just got worse. I remember thinking, just that I wish it had been me. Right? Someone like her just lived life better, she lived it right. And I just, and I went through another breakup, and COVID happened, and I was seeing someone else who had similar drinking habits as I did. And I just continued to kind of just drink myself into oblivion. It's telling when you're already spending a lot of your time with someone who drinks a lot, but you still have to separate yourself from them so you can drink the way that you really want to, right?
Are you working at this time?
No, I mean, like, it was COVID, and been working in a restaurant, so we were just kind of like living off of, you know, the checks. And so that was just 100% going to alcohol.
That took you from the local to the express train.
Yep.
Thank God for that. For a lot of people, you know, because like a lot of people, COVID was like, they didn't have enough time to speed the bottom along.
Right.
Because you're working and this and that, and when all of a sudden you got nothing to do, and you have a few bucks in your pocket, you can find your way down to the bottom.
Yeah. So, I mean, I just was just lost, right? I just like, especially with my life before COVID happened was already like, didn't feel like it really had a future, and then here we are in this kind of dystopian feeling place, and I was swallowed by credit card debt. I mean, I would quit drinking just long enough to look at all the credit card statements on my bed, and just like basically have a panic attack, you know. And I felt like I couldn't tell anyone. It was all just pretending, you know. And then a friend of mine we used to work at a couple different places together, kind of just hit me up out of the blue, and shared some things about his journey with me. And he didn't have to do that. He was just like, I'm just meeting up with people, just, you know, do COVID safe things, like we'd go to the park or whatever. And I started hanging out with this dude. And
what was different about him? Just like in his spirit, like the way he was.
He wasn't drinking. he wasn't drinking. I was like, how do you do that? He wasn't drinking. And I was incredibly drawn to it. I was like, I couldn't explain it. I just, like, So we started spending time together, and just, like, being around someone that just has a sober mind is just so helpful. Even if you're not talking about alcohol things, right? Just being around someone who, like, is feeling pretty good today because they've, like, freshened up. Like, there's just something about it. It's almost, it's like palpable, you know? And, you know, I'd done my breaks. I'd done my dry Januaries that were always followed by the worst Februaries known to man. I mean, like, and again, here's another thing to consider. At this point, it's not that, like, I hadn't done almost everything I could to die by accident, you know? Climbing buildings, going down subway, you know, platforms, and the drinking and driving before. It's not like I hadn't tried everything I could to, like, accidentally die, because I didn't want to do it myself. And it's just kind of like plateauing this place of, like, well, here's this other option. And not that it really presented itself as that at the time. It was just I couldn't do it anymore. So I basically said to him one day, I was like, I can't fucking do this anymore. I was like getting emotional. I'll never forget this. I was actually getting emotional, and I could tell that he was, like, a little uncomfortable. He was, like, you know, a little more manly man about it. Like, oh, okay, well, but what was great about it was kind of like gave me this call to action of, like, if it felt like, oh, okay, you've had enough, you don't want to drink, then don't drink. That's kind of like, you know, we parted ways. I got on the train. I was just, like, sitting on the train. I was just thinking, don't drink. And, I mean, there were a couple other things that happened, but that was kind of the overall sentiment at the time. I mean, like, and I had started bartending again at this place in Manhattan. And, you know, still
this is after COVID opened up, or no?
It was still very much COVID. I just wanted to try and have a job by the time COVID was over, right?
Okay.
So, like, I'm in there, and it was really funny, too, to see, like, true alcoholics, like, still, you know, they'll go to any lengths to still be in the bar, right? And it's like we're putting tables up against the bar so you could, because we weren't really allowed to sit at the bar yet. We're doing everything we could to, like, make alcoholics, the regulars, like, still feel, you know, like they could do their thing. And it was it was really interesting, you know, just getting so used to drinking the way that we were during COVID, and then like working, and like, I mean, I got caught drinking by an employee, by like an equal, and it was really weird because like no one had ever reacted that way ever before. Like in the industry, everyone drinks essentially, and so there was this kind of like weird thing for the first time behind a bar, and I felt like I couldn't drink or I was gonna get in trouble or whatever, and so like I started like bringing in, you know, this was March 3 years ago. I started bringing in, you know,
airplane bottles.
No, it was like a coffee. Why can't I think of the word for this? Just like a to-go coffee cup, a thermos. I just started bringing in thermoses with Jameson in it and just pretending I was drinking coffee. And yeah, there was St. Patrick's Day. I just like got absolutely railed and took weed gummies and ended up like on the train just like screaming and yelling, and like I had videos of it, and like cut to just kind of like a couple weeks later, you know, just not drinking, just behind the bar, and just like this girl was like on my ass, and like there was a fear of getting fired, and then so part of it too was kind of this challenge of like, well, you know what would really help? You know what would really help you not get fired from this job for drinking? If you didn't drink.
Right.
You know? So I would just like, I had this thing, and again, it's not like I hadn't taken breaks before, but this time definitely felt different. And, you know, I basically just, you know, I put it in my phone, the timer started, and in the notes I just said, I don't drink. That's what I put in there. And I would like be behind the bar, and I would just jiggle the Jameson bottle every once in a while, just to kind of like say hi to it, just kind of like jiggle it around. And it's kind of incredible, really, to have been around it. And I would get off work at like 2 a.m, and I would get on a city bike, and those things are heavy too. And I just needed something to do with all that energy, you know what I mean? And so I would get on a city bike and ride. It was at least like 45 minutes, an hour, over the Manhattan Bridge every night. And I remember it was like, yeah, springtime, and it was beautiful. And I'd go up the Manhattan Bridge, and it's just like a climb. And then you get over, and you start going down, and there's these lights. And every time a light would hit me, like I could see my shadow. This is corny, but I tell this every time I speak. I remember I just kept, it would flash, and it would see me, and just like the whole way down, just kind of like this like silhouette of a person that could be sober, you know, like that's me, man.
I'm doing it. Like what you were talking about, like with your aunt, that she was living it, you were living it. Fucking crazy.
I mean, it started small, but yeah, man, I credit her 1,000%. She is this like Tinkerbell, like she's like this little fairy dust that like lives inside me, that like if I couldn't do it for me, I would do it for her, so she could teach me how to do it for me, I guess. Like, yeah, and now there are so many things that I think about when I'm like pissed off or whatever. It's like there's so many things that I think about that she would be so fucking stoked, you know.
She's watching right now, like right fucking now.
Yeah,
she's proud, bro.
Yeah,
you can feel it.
Yeah.
Was that the last time?
When
you started counting days?
Yeah, that was it. That was it, man. I had my friend that I told you about. I mean, mm-hmm. I didn't make it into an AA meeting for over a year.
Fuck.
Not a year.
Beautiful. I
mean, I looked at the meetings. I looked at them all the time.
Oh, you knew.
Yeah, I was like looking on the phone, scrolling. I was like, nah, I'm not doing it. And so, like, you know, I get, yeah, I you know, that was my experience. And that year was incredible. That year was incredible. I had that friend. I called him when I wanted to drink. He told me not to, and I didn't. And I just would walk my dog and, like, listen to music, and, like, lyrics and songs start to come back. Do you remember that? Did that happen? It's like you're listening and you're like, holy shit, they're talking.
Like saying something.
Yeah, saying something. And
not like words, like saying something.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. That's like magic. For me, that was like being reborn.
Yeah.
Swear to God. Like when I was just like, and then, not to go off on my own ego tangent.
No, you're good. Please
But
do.
like, then I'm like, oh, I used to love these songs when I was a teenager. Then you start listening to them like, bro, these guys are suffering. Freaking Nirvana, Alice in Chains, all that stuff. I was like,
these guys need to do an inventory.
Yeah, like these. Oh my God, my favorite, and we'll get back to your story for those of you who want to have a good laugh. If you listen to Alice in Chains' song Angry Chair, he's like sitting in a meeting, sitting on my angry chair, you know. But the pink, talking about the pink cloud, everything. He's angry, trying to, like, you know, like white knuckling it. It's different than like what you were talking about to me as somebody who's been around a gazillion years, is the surrender. You surrender that this is your new life, that you don't drink. And when you have a problem, you call your friend and you walk in your dog, and you're again, like, you're like reborn. Like you're just like reborn, meaning like I'm born again. Like this is I'm walking my dog and I'm not angry.
Right.
And I'm not like, for me, when I'm in the disease, my normal state of mind is, everybody's different. So I'm interested in what yours is. Mine is irritation. I didn't have to be angry all the time, whatever. I was just always irritated, you know? So when that starts to get lifted from you, you're like free.
Right.
So you did that for a whole year.
Yeah. I mean, I think you described it well, and it's just kind of keeping it simple, right?
Yeah.
I owe so much. I love my friend, and we're brothers. And,
Sure.
I think that was a huge, you know, having even if it was like a little micro, having a support system, and just like, yeah, keeping it simple, and
your life started getting better.
yeah. A huge part for me was becoming like physically active and like working out. Like I especially growing up, like feeling nerdy and all that. Like it was really cool seeing the gym, a place that like I was terrified of because of like locker room bullying or whatever growing up, toxic masculinity, that kind of stuff. Like
Which is real.
Going in the gym and like the transformation of being certain that everyone in there is looking at you, to getting to a place where you feel comfortable and confident and realizing that everyone's just trying to work on themselves. I think
It's just like where the dorks go to hang out. They're just different dork.
Yeah.
And of course, there's still some of that toxic stuff, but that's like 4%. People in the gym,
Totally.
if they take their headphone off, they'll talk to you like, oh, do you need help with this? Like, whatever.
Yeah. There's a real etiquette and cool kind of like coexistence that happens there that for me was a good metaphor for life.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that was...
So you got into exercise?
Got into exercise, yeah.
Beautiful.
I was able to, you know, obviously it was still a little bit COVID, but start, investing my time in more things that would, support the acting. Like getting new, I was so proud of myself. I was able to save up some real money for once for some good headshots. You know what I mean? Like instead of drinking it all away, like putting down some good money for like some professional shots that I still use this day. Like it was just kind of like you said, a new life, you know?
Yeah. So when did you transition from doing it on your own and with your friend to like, all right, maybe I'll try and poke around and see what's up with these rooms?
So that was like over a year, right? I had always said that I was going to go to a meeting on my year so I could like celebrate it, right? But I missed it, obviously. And then so I came in and it was this really strange. Was
it in the city or in Brooklyn?
Yeah, it was here. It was in Brooklyn. My very first meeting, I remember just kind of feeling like, one, that maybe I missed out right? Like, because then you see people counting days, counting months, and all this, like,
And all the clapping.
yeah, and I'm just like, where the fuck have I been, you know? And so, and some of that imposter syndrome that comes with that, but then also just like hearing people talk. I mean, come on, yeah, I had my friend, but being surrounded by people that all have this same kind of like, you know, I think at the time, even before AA, I don't know that I would call myself an alcoholic. Like, I knew I was an addict of sorts, but I never really put the word alcoholic to it. And so just kind of like, it took a little while just kind of with, you know, that's when you start to learn kind of the reasons why you're drinking in the first place. And for me, sure, I'm good on stage, but I'm fucking terrified of people, man. And so that was, you know, hard, but in a good way hard, because like then it kind of became this kind of like, you know, I did get my sponsor like we were talking about before, and that was a game changer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it kind of just felt like the next phase, right? Like life is a lot better, but like, oh shit, let's work. Because then I went from working behind the bar, this is a big transition, to like working as a production assistant for TV shows, which obviously for me, like, that was huge. That was awesome. But I also found myself like, yeah, I was used to being behind the bar, and when people are being dicks or people are misbehaving or whatever, you're the bartender. You can be like, get the fuck out of here. You know what I mean? And I was definitely acting in an angry place at the time. You know, I wasn't really, you know, acting out of love. I was sober, but I wasn't really in a good place yet.
Right,
so,
like you were sober, but you didn't have like the recovery.
Right.
Of how to behave.
Exactly.
Appropriate. Yeah, sure.
So, you know, I'm started working this real kind of, for lack of a better term,
it is a real job.
A real job,
Yeah.
and I'm just finding myself, I don't know how to fucking behave around these people. I can't tell people what I want to tell them without being an asshole. Like, how do I behave? Like, how do I, like, you know, coexist without all these like seething resentments and judgments and, like, you know what I mean? Like,
and burning your time away with them, even by yourself.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
You know, the thing people say about like resentment or whatever, it's like it's an audience of one.
Yeah.
You know, it's just me up here just like
Ruminating.
kicking up all this shit.
Yeah,
It's just only me really suffering. So that was huge, and my sponsor definitely held my hand through that, you know.
There we go.
There you go.
I actually fell through the
You
floor.
fell through the hole?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
All right. Sorry, that was an inside joke. But go ahead. So you got to work with your sponsor, and you started unraveling some of those things.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I definitely think him and I were supposed to link up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think him and I were supposed to link up because we're definitely, his approach and just kind of like I said, holding my hand through it and like being patient and like not being too forceful and just kind of like giving me space, but also giving me what I need to hear when I don't want to hear it sometimes, you know?
Yeah, I've found that philosophy to be supremely helpful in my life, where like none of these are original thoughts, but like somebody showed me or heard it somewhere where it says like the obstacle is the way. The thing that I don't want to hear, that's the thing, you know? And I had to maybe not comply all the time, but understand that that's the thing. When somebody, you know, because part of the disease that we share, you know, and I talk about it all the time on the show, is that like I would be offended anytime somebody tried to help me. Like straight up offended, like, no, how dare you?
100%.
Oh. So, but then meanwhile, they're just like trying to help you.
Yeah. Fuck them.
Yeah, exactly. So, but when you have the right guy, and the way you were talking about, like it wasn't two ships passing in the night. It was like two planets in orbit, and your orbits were like overlapping, and then bang, 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 he's your guy, and guess what? He's talking your language.
Yeah.
Yeah. Man, that's magic.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what's life like for you right now?
I mean, it's great, man. I mean,
how many years in are you?
So it'll be 3 on the 21st.
Beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, it's it reaches that point, right, where it's like I'm playing, I'm playing the game of life on a different difficulty level, right? Because I can handle it. Like you bump it up once you've, we've dealt with a lot of like really like foundational things for me, and it's just kind of continuing to be patient and like learn when things aren't as like kind of fantastical as they may have felt those first. I was thinking about today, man, those first days, those first months, those like I said with the bike thing, those things are magical, man. They hold such a kind of magical place in your memory. So like now it feels like the real shit. Like now we're like getting our hands dirty and like figuring out how to budget and like and like trying to just do better, but also without putting too much pressure on yourself, right? It's a really hard thing to do. It's really challenging, but it's beautiful to have the opportunity to be with someone you love, to be there for your family, and I can tell when I talk to friends that there's something that's happened that I just feel more there. I feel more there, It's great. And yeah. I like what you said about the obstacles is the solution. I think that's true. I think a lot of times I have to remind myself that, like, yeah, that's kind of what I'm in it for. I'm here to, like, work and learn versus, like, go back to that, like, instant solution, right?
Yeah, because we have this thing where we think that help is the absence of pain. And that's not it. Help is like, how can I go through that pain? Not for everybody on earth, but for people like us, because the mental part of this disease says to us, this is too painful. I don't want to be here.
Yeah.
Right? But the truth is that the glory is on the other side of that pain. So if we get some relief in fucking 6 donuts or like, you know what I'm saying? Or it's, when I try to describe the real, I mean, our disease is a real one. Mm-hmm. Listen, if insurance covered you to go get help, and if the judge sends you to rehab before jail, it can't be any more, I don't know how much more legit you want it to be. You know, where society, like, really understands that this is a real disease, where I have to remind myself that, caffeine is not the answer for anxiety. But meanwhile, when I have a list of shit to do and I get anxious about it, I'm thinking if I go get a double espresso that, you know what I'm saying? So
it'll make it all better.
Right. Where like the truth is that what I need to do is take a step back. Maybe if I need to be reminded, I'll make a phone call, maybe make a list. And actually slow down, and then I can fucking do all of those things. But I need to be reminded to do that because that's not my natural inclination. So if I find myself accepting that about me, I'm like, dude, where else am I missing the mark in my life? Like you said, budgeting and learning how to work with other people, but still expressing yourself and not just being the doormat, and having that balance, like without instructions, it's impossible for me.
Yeah.
Somebody described it, it also came to me actually, but they described it in a similar way where like, especially for somebody like you, the video games, you got to go from being player 1 to player 2.
Oh, damn.
That's it now, but you're in the game, but you got to be player 2. And like your sponsor and the group and everybody is like, they got to be player 1. You're still going to win, but when you be player 1, then you're by yourself. You know what I'm saying? But if you're player 2, like, bro, you get it all the way. And it's a magical thing.
There's a Luigi joke in there somewhere, but I don't know what it is.
I'm sure. All right, guys, we're going to wrap it up. Matt, beautiful to talk. This is the longest we've ever talked ever in like real life. And everybody, don't forget Sober Experience. Like and subscribe on all. I'm saying you, as long as you and I have talked.
Oh, I got you.
No, yeah,
I got
exactly.
You. I was gonna say.
No, you're not the champion. I promise. But most of the time it's me. I'm like Babylonia. So everybody, Sober Experience, like and subscribe on all podcast platforms. Please find also our new YouTube channel where you can listen to the audio version of this and every other episode we have. And please don't forget to share with your friends. Leave any comments. Send us messages if you need any help. If you have 4-letter words, we'll take them too. All right, guys. I love you. Peace.